Senator Sam Caligiuri is taking on Congressman Chris Murphy. We'll check in on the 5th District race with the challenger. Also, the Hockanum Valley Community Council has spent 40 years helping people in need. The executive director is here to talk about their increased mission on this anniversary year. Hi, you're watching The Real Story. I'm Lori Perez. He has been a state senator, an acting mayor, and now Senator Sam Caligiuri is eyeing a seat in Washington as the 5th District's U.S. Congressman. Senator Sam Caligiuri is the Republican Party endorsed candidate. He won the endorsement with 67% of the vote at the convention. He is in his second term representing Connecticut's 16th district. That's Southington, Wolcott, and parts of Cheshire and Waterbury. He was acting mayor in Waterbury, and he is a partner in the Hartford law firm of Dave Pitney. He's a married father of 2 and a lifelong resident of Waterbury. Joining us for a discussion of the 5th District race is Pat Scully of Scully Communications and the greatly popular blog, The Hanging Shed. Thanks, both of you, for being here. Senator, thanks for coming. You know, let's start off with President Obama came to town this week to support Dick Blumenthal in his Senate run against Linda McMahon. Tell me what you think about the visit. You think it's going to help Linda, or?
Well, I mean, it highlights the issues, and the issues are driving this campaign. Ultimately, people are profoundly unhappy with the direction that our country is heading in. Chris Murphy's been part of that problem. I think Dick Blumenthal subscribes to exactly the type of philosophy that's driving people crazy right now. And so the president's visit is going to underscore how deeply unpopular the policies that he and Nancy Pelosi and Chris Murphy had been advocating, and which, in my judgment and in the judgment of a lot of people, haven't helped Americans. So I think it's going to continue to reinforce that this campaign is ultimately about issues, and that's true whether it's the governor's race, the Senate race, and certainly, as far as I'm concerned, the 5th District race is all about the issues and about what I call the better way to tackle the problems and the way the administration and Chris Murphy are trying to do it right now.
Do you think that people's displeasure with the policies as they are now, as you called it, is that fueling the tightening of your race?
Well, it's part of it, because ultimately it's not about personality, it's about the people. And right now the people are hurting badly, and they're frustrated and they're angry with the direction that our country is heading in. They are not in agreement with the policies that Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi have been advocating. They understand that they're not the right solutions, and they're not helping. In fact, they're making things worse for people. So this campaign is going to be about the issues, because ultimately the issues are about the people. And campaigns aren't about the candidates. It isn't about my opponent. It's not about Sam Caligiuri. It's about competing visions, and very different competing visions, for how to turn this country around.
Senator, talking about people who are hurting, one of the most vigorous debates right now is whether to extend the tax cuts, the George W. Bush-era tax cuts that expire at the end of the year. Now, having been working for the state Senate Democrats when you first came to the state Senate, I know you're against raising taxes on anyone. But if a bill came before you as a member of Congress that let the tax cuts expire for the wealthy but continue for the middle class, how would you vote?
Well, ultimately, I'm not going to vote against tax relief for anybody. So I would stand there and I would vote yes, because anybody we can provide tax relief to, we should provide tax relief to. But I think that misses the broader point. Right now, the rate that they're considering putting in place are folks who are small businessmen and women. You know, the tax rate that Chris Murphy wants to keep or have go up represents the engine of our economic vitality. And I think it's wrong as a matter of policy. It's wrong from an economics perspective to be raising taxes on small businesses. You know, it's easy to demagogue this issue, because people say, look, oh, gee, you're making $200,000 a year, you're a couple making over $250,000 a year, you should pay more. What people don't realize, and what Democratic politicians like Chris Murphy don't tell you, is that most small businesses are formed as pass-through entities for tax purposes, which means that that business's income is imputed to the individual as their individual income. So when you're raising taxes on people making over 200 or 250, you're raising taxes on small business. That's why earlier this week, 31 Democrats in the House of Representatives called on Nancy Pelosi to reverse her position and extend the tax cuts fully for everyone, because it's insanity to raise taxes on small businesses right now, and that's what Chris Murphy wants to do.
You're a deficit hawk, as I know, at least on the state level thus far. Wouldn't extending them for everyone blow a massive hole in the deficit?
Certainly not compared to what the health care bill has done, the stimulus bill has done. This is about, we need to get spending under control. So the issue is, how do we spend? And where do we spend our money? I would much rather repeal the stimulus bill, not pursue a second stimulus, repeal the health care bill, and start putting tough spending caps in place on the entire federal budget so that you can really rein in spending, because the fact of the matter is spending's grown out of control whether it was Republicans in charge or Democrats in charge. So we've really got to put structural mechanisms in place to safeguard the entire system from overspending. But ultimately, I would much rather, quote, spend by cutting taxes than by actually increasing the size of the government, because it's not helping to grow our economy.
Is that the number one issue that you're hearing from people as you're on the road? Or they're talking about how are you going to get spending?
Yeah, well, spending in the economy. Yeah. And what's interesting, people understand that there are two sides of the same coin. And people, I met a guy the other day in Wolcott, 56 years old. He's been unemployed for a year and a half. And he was almost in tears as he was explaining to me his struggle to find work. He says, Sam, you know, it's like I can't afford not to have a job, but I'm almost too old to get hired, and I'm competing with so many other people. And the guy was almost a broken man. And he's not just one. It's more than one person. It's so many people that I meet. And the problem is, we've got a chance to turn this country around and to get our economy turned around, but we're not going to be able to do it through Chris Murphy's and Nancy Pelosi's policies. They're part of what got us to where we are today. They haven't helped, however well-intentioned, and they're only going to make it worse.
How soon could you put some of those ideas into action if you were elected? I mean, how soon could we see a turnaround?
Well, I would hope that a lame duck Congress doesn't go ahead and do something even worse for the economy, number one. So I would urge from the time I was elected, God willing, Congressman Murphy and others, to not keep pushing through an agenda that's not going to help this country. But one of the first things that I would do is vote to extend the tax cuts. If they haven't been extended, put them back in place. Right now, I talk to so many small businesses who are sitting on their cash because they don't know if their taxes are going to go up in January. You know what that means? That means they can't hire that extra person. They can't invest in that extra piece of machinery, and that uncertainty is ultimately hurting people.
Do you think that, well, I would advise a candidate to do the same thing, but so far every time you've answered, you've said Chris Murphy and Nancy Pelosi. Are they one and the same to you?
Yeah. They really are, because I think, with all due respect, Chris Murphy has proven himself more interested in being Nancy Pelosi's congressman than he has been the 5th District congressman, because he's been with Nancy Pelosi down the line nearly 99% of the time. And I say that with all due respect. And whatever his reasoning is, whether it's because he actually believes in that philosophy or because he's a go-along-to-get-along kind of a guy, either way, we're hurting as a result. You know, he took Nancy Johnson to task in 2006 for siding with George W. Bush 79.1% of the time. That would be a welcome change to the nearly 99% of the time that he follows the party line. People want independence. You know, my budget vote was a hard vote, being the only person to stand up there and vote no, even in the face of a governor who wanted it of my own party. That's the kind of independence people want. Chris Murphy's never shown a shred of it. That's what we need in Washington right now, and that's what I can provide.
We're going to take a quick break. Stay with us as we continue our conversation with Senator Sam Caligiuri. He's a candidate for Congress. Hello? We are back with Senator Sam Caligiuri, who's running for Congress, and Pat Scully. Senator, if we could talk about money in this race. Chris Murphy has more money than you do. Is that going to be a role? I mean, it's not as much of a differential as, say, Blumenthal McMahon, but what role do you think it's going to play in the campaign?
Well, I mean, it always plays a role, but the reality is it doesn't decide elections. You know, when Chris Murphy defeated Nancy Johnson, he was outraised and outspent, I believe, almost over 2 to 1. So the reality is when you've got the race dynamics on your side and you've got the issues on your side, as we do in this case, then, you know, my goal isn't to match Chris Murphy in fundraising. I don't have to match Chris Murphy in fundraising. I have to raise what I need to raise to get my message out, and we're doing it. We've been fundraising very well. But we had to win a primary against a self-funded opponent who took $1 million out of his pocket and spent most of it trying to tear me down. So I've had to fight hard every step of the way, but frankly, the way I've scrapped, the way I've fought, that's the kind of congressman I'm going to be for people, because this is not a time for the faint-hearted. You need to be able to take a punch, you need to be able to give one back sometimes, and I need to do that not just as a candidate, but as a congressman for the sake of the people I hope to represent.
It's a challenge for the challenger to the incumbent to always try to contrast yourself. But inevitably they fall into the guy that there's now is wrong about this, he's wrong about that, he's wrong about that. Can you give us a couple of things, forget Chris Murphy, that you want to do in Congress?
Yeah, absolutely. Number one, to get jobs growing again. And look, to me, the reason I'm running for Congress is because our fiscal situation is a mess. And I believe the solutions that are being advanced are the wrong solutions to get it in order. We've got to get spending under control. I would do that, number one, by making sure the stimulus doesn't become a permanent part of the federal budget. Number two, I would push to put tough, enforceable spending caps in place on the entire federal budget so that we can once and for all start to get federal spending under control. I would make sure that the 01 and 03 tax cuts are at a minimum extended, if not made permanent. And I would work very, very hard to cut the corporate tax rate, which is the second highest in the industrialized world, and the marginal effective tax rate for individuals, because that's the real stimulus. So that's really what I'm going down there to do, to get this economy turned around. You know, my view is the federal government doesn't grow jobs. What the federal government does is put policies in place that will either make it easier for the private sector to grow jobs or harder for the private sector to grow jobs. Right now, Chris Murphy is advancing policies that I think are making it harder for the private sector to grow jobs. I want to go down there and do it differently so that we can empower business to do what they do best, so that we can empower entrepreneurs to do what they do best. But we can't do it with policies that are strangling them, and that's what's happening right now. So those are a few of the things that I would push for.
So as you make that your mission, you know, I was at UTC today, and they were talking about how they just have made expansions in Ireland. They've opened up offices in Ireland and in Europe with their research center. Right. And I thought, well, great, but we're here in East Hartford. You know, I mean, is there an equal commitment? And when you hear about Connecticut strongholds like UTC doing that, I mean, does that make you worried, or does it make you think, well, what are we not doing here?
Well, it does, but you know what we never do? We never take the time to ask the honest question, why are they leaving? Instead of demagoguing the issue, we need to understand that the reason they're leaving is because when they look at the bottom line, they can make more money for their shareholders and for their employees by shifting jobs to Ireland than they can by staying here. So does that mean we ought to rail against them? I say let's be constructive and let's solve the problems that are making it too expensive for them to do business here. Ireland's a prime example. A moment ago I said we have the second highest corporate tax rate in the industrialized world. Ireland has the lowest. That's a prime example. So instead of demagoguing these issues, I don't want a single job to leave Connecticut. I don't want a single job to leave the United States. But if we choose to demagogue it instead of asking the tough questions, and the tough question is this, what policies are we advancing that are forcing these people out because they can't afford to do business here? We need to solve that problem.
And you talked about folks being concerned about their future.
Yeah.
As far as Social Security, should it be privatized in any part?
No. I wouldn't support privatizing Social Security, and I would never support cuts to benefits for people who are in the system or who are going to be in the system anytime in the foreseeable future. Fact is, I've got a mother in her 70s who relies very heavily on her Social Security. It would be devastating to her. But you know what's so insulting to people, what hurts people so much? Seniors haven't gotten a cost of living adjustment in 2 years. The first time in over 50 years, if memory serves. that's really hurting them, because guess what? Their electric bills are going up, their food bills are going up, and why aren't they getting it? Because the formula has said that we haven't had a growing economy. So seniors are getting killed on Social Security, not getting their COLAs, because our economy is being devastated by the policies that Murphy and Pelosi are advancing. So by getting the economy growing again, seniors could actually start getting their COLAs again instead of being hurt as collateral damage in this very weak economy that Murphy's been a part of.
I always like to ask our guests, what are we not talking about that you would like to talk about? Because we always hit on the big issues, obviously the economy, growing jobs, et cetera. But is there anything that you always wish you could talk about to potential voters that, you think is too boring or too not campaign savvy?
I mean, that's very interesting. Maybe not so much from an issues perspective. I think one of the things that bothers me so much is how much cynicism there is in the electorate about politics. And I understand why people are cynical. I understand why they're frustrated. But one of the things that whenever I give a tour of the Capitol or as a state senator, or I talk to people, I tell them, look, I know that a lot of times on the news you're seeing us fighting with each other. We actually agree, and work together a lot more than seems to meet the eye, and you know that, Pat, from your own experiences. And so, you know what? We disagree bitterly on policy, and sometimes politics gets in the way of doing the right thing. But I guess I want people to know that there are a lot of well-intentioned people who are really trying to do their best in the system, and I hope that, that will help to arrest some of the cynicism that bothers me, because you know what? This is the greatest political system in the world, as flawed as it is. But you know what? Our founders understood that citizens have to be engaged in the process. And what scares me about the cynicism is that sometimes it makes people not want to be engaged. And I think the more engaged people can be, the better off the system is. And one of the advantages of the engagement we've seen this year, even in the Tea Party movement, is that people who have never been involved in politics before are getting involved, not because they're interested in partisanship, because they're every bit as angry with Republicans as they are Democrats, but because they're so frustrated they want to take their country back. And I hope that everybody can be a part that way in this system.
All right. Well, you are very passionate. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thank you.
Thanks
It's a pleasure to be here.
And thanks, Pat, for being here with us. Ahead, we're going to talk about a social service agency changing lives in Talon County. They are celebrating decades of good works this year. I just didn't know what the number was. Record high in...
And like over 50 years.
Oh, my goodness.
If I remember correctly.
It's crazy.
Thank you.
It's crazy.
Thanks
it's
a lot.
really good. Thank you.
Good to see you.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks for being a part of
We'll
this.
see you on the